Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Bayou Time. I'm Martin False with Captain Brennan Mathern of the Lafourche Parish Sheriff's Office. Captain, good to see you on a tough story, but maybe you could fill us in on a homicide investigation in Matthews.
Absolutely, Martin. Good to be here. Unfortunately, the circumstances call for us to be dealing with a homicide. This is something that occurred in midday on Sunday, uh, and we had a call around 12:20 p.m. on Sunday informing us that there had been a stabbing on Adams Street in the Matthews area. Our deputies immediately responded, and when they arrived, they found two things. They found one, the suspect, who was immediately taken into custody and pointed out by bystanders as the suspect, and that was 18-year-old Trey Booty. He has been arrested and charged with second-degree murder in this investigation. Of course, he was immediately arrested, and as other deputies were arriving to the scene, as well as Lockport police officers who were helping us at the scene, we found the victim, who was 20-year-old Hunter Parks. We located him on a porch of his mother's residence. He was had several stab wounds and was bleeding profusely. Deputies attempted life-saving measures until EMTs arrived. Fortunately, he was pronounced dead at the scene. The investigation continued with detectives. They attempted to question Trey as to the incident and what led to it. He did not cooperate with investigators, so ultimately they sought and obtained a warrant for second-degree murder charges for Trey Booty, and he has been arrested, and he is now being held in lieu of $500,000 bail.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Sometimes I look at the pictures they take, and you can almost tell the story. Sometimes by the look they give. Sometimes, but that's for another day. I guess we could go into analyzing pictures. But let me ask you something, Captain, on the homicides. And I've asked this question to everyone who's in the local area. Do you find that homicides are going up by numbers, or that folks they don't go out to the park anymore and settle it with the old fist fight like we used to say? They want to take matters a little further to where there's no coming back from that.
Well, Martin, this is something that we've actually discussed, very commonly here. As far as Lafourche Parish goes, it's hard to look at a number from one year to the next and say, well, homicides are going up or homicides are going down. It could be more of a reflection of society in general, but we have so few. I mean, we have less than 10 just about every year in Lafourche Parish that it's hard to look at, a number rising or falling as some sort of pattern. What it really amounts to is what you just said, is individual circumstances. In Lafourche Parish, we're fortunate that if you live here, if you work here, the chances of you being a victim of a random act of violence are very low. So whenever we have a homicide, almost every instance of homicide since I've been with the sheriff's office, there's been a connection. It hasn't been a random act. There's been a connection. In this case, with this homicide, you have a situation where two individuals were in an altercation, one thing leads to another, and one stabs the other. So ultimately, that's what we're looking at. When we have a homicide in Lafourche Parish, you can usually track it down to drugs, to property crime potentially, or to some association between the suspect and the victim. And that's what we had here. You have a situation where they had a disagreement, they were in an altercation, and things just escalated. That can happen in any situation, in any fight, in any altercation between two people. Thankfully, it happens far fewer than not, but that's what we're looking at in this situation. And so again, it's hard to tell from a local standpoint, are we seeing a rise or fall, because they're so very specific to the instances.
Yeah, and let me ask you this as well. I know everyone wants to tie things to video games. I'm not necessarily one to tie them to video games, but I often urge, if I have to go to school and speak, before somebody does something really violent, well, if they could just count to 10 in their head and think This is what my future is if I put the knife back in my duffel bag. This is what my future is if I stab somebody. Your thoughts?
Yeah, you have a situation. Yeah, sure. You have a situation where you have a 20-year-old victim and an 18-year-old suspect in this particular case. And for all intents and purposes, both of their lives are now forever changed. In one case, you have a 20-year-old who had his whole life ahead of him, and his life was ended and taken prematurely. On the other side, you have an 18-year-old where, again, not trying to necessarily put victim blame, or put shine the suspect in a different light, but the fact of the matter is that at 18 years old, he's now facing a second-degree murder charge. So he's facing the possibility of life in prison without parole. So for all intents and purposes, his life is either over or at least permanently altered. And certainly, I doubt that he woke up yesterday morning thinking that. So you make a good point, Martin, that every action that we take has a consequence. And unfortunately, in this particular case, it not only took the life away of a 20-year-old, but now an 18-year-old is facing his life forever changed.
And I know y'all do a great job, Captain, of going in. You've been doing it for years, going into schools, talking to young people. And look, I mean, we hear these stories, but just on the flip side, the successful stories where y'all got through to people, I know we can't never do stories on it because we don't hear about it, but congratulations on the ones y'all have informed who haven't taken the next step. Everybody has people slip through the cracks in every business, everything you do, but congratulations to you, the force, the sheriff, for doing a job well done.
Well, we appreciate it, Martin. And like you said, the whole goal here is very simply to get teenagers, to get even young adults and even regular adults to understand the consequences of actions. You bring up video games, and it's not just video games nowadays. It's television, it's movies, anywhere that they're exposed to violence. As a society, we're becoming numb to those acts of violence. What we can't become numb to is the fact that it is entertainment. And if we're digesting or ingesting all of that entertainment, we have to put it in perspective. It's fine to play those video games as long as you're not relating it to the real world and becoming numb to all the violence that you see. And when you come to the real world, there's actual consequences for everything that you do.
All right, Captain Brendan Mathern, thank you. Tell the sheriff hello, and we'll talk with you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.
All right, we'll be right back with more right here on Bayou Time.